The quantum resonance compatibility system had never been wrong. In 300 years of operation across 47 star systems, it had matched billions of beings with their perfect companions. The algorithm was considered infallible, a mathematical certainty that transcended species, culture, and biology itself, which made the result, currently displayed on Empress Vacthria's holographic interface, completely impossible. "There must be an error," she said, her crystalline voice echoing through the obsidian chamber. Her 6 advisors stood in nervous silence, their bioluminescent markings flickering with anxiety. "Your radiance," the chief technician stammered, his tentacles quivering. "We've run the diagnostic protocols 43 times. The system is functioning perfectly." Vacthria's 4 eyes narrowed as she stared at the display. The compatibility score glowed an unprecedented 99.7%. And the match? A human. Not just any human. A maintenance worker from the lower decks of a mining station in the furthest reaches of her empire. Eric Chen, 28 standard years old, unremarkable in every measurable way. "Bring him here," she commanded. Eric thought he was being arrested when the Imperial Guard materialized in his quarters. He'd been elbow-deep in a malfunctioning recycling unit, wearing a grease-stained jumpsuit that had seen better decades. The guards, towering beings of armored chitin and cold purpose, said nothing as they escorted him aboard a ship that could have bought his entire station 100 times over. 3 days later, he stood in the throne room of the Zephyrian Empire, facing a being he'd only seen in propaganda broadcasts. Empress Vacthria was terrifying and magnificent. Her exoskeleton shimmered with iridescent patterns that shifted like oil on water. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her form elegant and alien, with 4 arms folded in a posture that suggested both regality and restraint. A crown of living crystal grew from her skull, pulsing with inner light. "Eric Chen," she said, and he was surprised to hear something almost like curiosity in her voice. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, Your Majesty," he managed, remembering at the last second to bow. I haven't done anything wrong. At least, I don't think I have." One of her advisors chittered something in a language that made Eric's translator implant buzz uncomfortably. Vacthria raised a hand for silence. "The compatibility system has matched us," she said flatly. "You and I, 99.7% compatible." Eric blinked. Then he laughed, a short, nervous sound that died quickly when he realized no one else was laughing. That's got to be a mistake," he said. "I'm nobody. You're the Empress of like a third of the galaxy." "My thoughts exactly," Vacthria replied. "Yet the system is never wrong." The rules were ancient and absolute. When the system matched a pair above 95% compatibility, protocol demanded a trial period of cohabitation. Refusal meant exile from the compatibility network entirely, a social death sentence in a civilization built on perfect matching. Even empresses were not exempt. So Eric moved into a guest wing of the palace, given quarters larger than any space he'd ever inhabited, and tried to make sense of his new reality. Vacthria, meanwhile, approached the situation with scientific detachment. If the system was correct, there must be a logical explanation. She invited him to dinner that first evening. They sat at opposite ends of a table designed for diplomatic functions, the distance between them a physical manifestation of the absurdity. "Tell me about yourself," Vacthria commanded. Eric shrugged, picking at food he couldn't identify. "Not much to tell. I fix things. Recyclers, air processors, water purifiers. If it's broken and nobody else wants to deal with it, they call me." "Why? Why do they call me? Why do you fix things nobody else will?" Eric considered this. Because they need to be fixed. Someone's got to do it, and I'm good at seeing how things fit together." how they're supposed to work. Something flickered in Vacthria's eyes. Continue. Over the following weeks, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Vacthria would handle imperial business during the day, arbitrating disputes between solar systems, managing trade agreements, occasionally sentencing war criminals. Eric would explore the palace, eventually finding his way to the maintenance levels where he'd help the staff with repairs. They'd meet in the evenings, and somehow they always ended up talking. Vacthria discovered that Eric had an uncanny ability to understand complex systems, not through formal education, but through intuition. He could look at the infrastructure of an empire and see the inefficiencies, the points of failure, the places where things didn't fit quite right. Eric discovered that behind the imperial facade, Vacthria was deeply lonely. She'd been raised from birth to rule, trained to see beings as resources, relationships as political calculations. She'd never had a friend, never had anyone who saw her as anything other than the empire itself made manifest. "The system matches psychological compatibility," she told him one evening, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "Not romantic love. That's a misunderstanding many beings have. It matches those who complete each other's fundamental nature." "And what do I complete in you?" Eric asked. Vacthria was silent for a long moment. "You see broken things and know they can be fixed. You believe in repair, in improvement. She gestured at the vast palace around them. "I see only what is already built, what must be maintained or destroyed. You showed me there's a third option." "And you," Eric said slowly, "you showed me that some systems are worth preserving. That order isn't the same as oppression." The compatibility score, they realized, wasn't a mistake. Humans had a gift the Empire desperately needed. They were fixers, adapters, stubborn believers in impossible solutions. And Eric had found in Vacthria something he'd never had, someone who valued his perspective not despite his ordinariness, but because of it. They never became lovers, but they became something rarer, true partners. Vacthria made Eric her chief infrastructure advisor, a newly created position that made the court gasp. Together, they began reforming the empire from the inside out, fixing systems that had been broken for centuries, but no one had thought to question. And the compatibility system, as always, proved itself correct. Sometimes the perfect match isn't about romance. Sometimes it's about finding the one person in the universe who helps you see what you've been missing all along. Sometimes the system pairs an empress with a maintenance worker because empires, like everything else, occasionally need someone who knows how to fix what's be.